Yes, thank you, Prof. Yilmaz. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you again for Prof. Simon. I mean, you unpack populism, you discuss and you pose question for all of us today. So I will start my presentation. Can you see my presentation? Yeah, I
Yes.
have to make disclaimer. I mean, I don't have the data that I needed. So this is based on the latest empirical data that I gathered through the research. So not all my assumption it's proven by the data, but I'll try to deliver what the data said in regards to Indonesia. Firstly, uh, I will discuss Indonesia in terms of the latest condition at present. I mean, in the past decade, we have a decline democracy situation. It's with the rise of the populism, we have the erosion of civil liberties, press freedom, and the polarization. I mean, several publications already suggested that in Indonesia during 2014, 2019 national and presidential election, we had polarization based on partisanship. Even though this partisanship it's contextual, I agree with your paper, Dr. Professor Yilmaz, from this session. I mean, there is a fluctuation of the concept populism. Uh, However, because my background in information and media, I drew my research based on communication perspective. The role of social media in the context of populism, and also the role of digital media in the context of the discourse. So the first thing I want to highlight is the role of social media, because social media, according to Papa Karizi, create a network self. The concept almost the same like Barry Wellman, an individual's network. So basically, social networks, I mean, our society consists of individual networks, not based on community. Therefore, we have issue how people access information, how we insulate from different perspective. That's my main argument. The firstly, the second one is the condition of digital divide. In Indonesia, we have big issue in terms of the first level digital divide, the second level of digital divide, let alone the third level of digital divide. So basically, the interaction between populism, uh, self-network, and digital divide create a worse condition for democratic process in Indonesia. The problem emerged during 2024 election, before the election, during the election, and the outcome. Uh, we know that the candidacy of Gibran, endorsed by the president, because Gibran is the eldest son of the president, creates a public outcry. Our constitution, Mahkamah Konstitusi decided that Gibran can participate in the election. And this is unexpected, like you said in the morning, Prof. Yilmaz. This is one round election with the landslide. It's 58%. It's huge with three candidates. So I mean, academics should pay attention to this discourse. I mean, this fact. Uh, at least we can discuss how we can understand or unpack the underlying mechanism that leads to this outcome, the election outcomes. So my paper posits that the interconnected dynamics of populism, digital divides, and the self networks, it seems detrimental to Indonesia future democracy. This is my research problem questions. So I use three different conceptual framing. I call it populism, digital divide, and network self. I agree with Simon. I emphasize populism as political strategy rather than as an event or as an effect. So all the candidates, three candidates, using almost similar rhetorics, populism. They divide between people and elites, even though they are all elites, right? They try to bypass traditional media because they believe direct connection with the people will help them to gain or to gather votes during the election. And the second one is the digital divide reinforce political participation. Those who at the bottom of the ladder, economic socioeconomic ladder, is less likely to be exposed with informative information in regards to political campaign. So most of them get the information from the opinion leaders. Most of opinion leaders in Indonesia is partition to one of the candidates, of three candidates. And lastly, the concept discussed about the network self, explore individual construct and perform their identities in online spaces. And the network, the self network can amplify polarizing narrative. Populism itself already polarized, and this network self, it's enhance the polarization. It creates the echo chamber. It's less likely those who support, let's say, Anies Baswedan will have information in regards to Prabowo, and they will rationally examine those information. So this contribute to a narrowing political discourse and increase social polarization. So this is I drew from data that I get. Uh, I divided three different data. I unpacked three different data. The first one is in regards to their rhetorics. The candidates' rhetorics. Anies, it's Anies during the 2000 Jakarta governor election against Ahok. Anies was branded as Islamic, traditional. But on the 2024 election, Anies creates a new persona. He he seems pluralist, right? Even though they embrace Islamist point of view, but it's more progressive. And Anies in his program, Anies offers, let's say, like a green economy, blue economy using scientific approach. His campaign always based on social media data. It works somehow because Anies gather around 24% of voters, and most of the voters from Gen Z and millennial because Anies Anies team's campaign is very savvy with social media. Uh, you can see there is a one site dedicated from Anies. They call it Have an Anies Day, and also one uh, Twitter or X account, Anies Bubble, that copied K-pop style of fandom. So basically, Anies try to fit with the hype of social media for the young generation. However, Prabowo is slightly changed from the traditional populism into a more moderate form of populism. He branded himself as the continuation of Jokowi. He will execute all program from the Jokowi. While Gadjah, it's more technocratic populism, using traditional campaign method like Jokowi in 2004 and 2019. Ganjar visited rural area, discuss with the people, so on and so forth. So basically, their populism strategy almost similar, just using different rhetorics. And this is the data I drew from three different occasions using different social media. The first one is on your left. I hope this is from Twitter network self. Uh, this is data from January 2024. This data suggests, yeah, it's polarization or clustering aligned with the presidential race. There is a Gadjah, Anies, and Prabowo. But it seems like Anies and Gadjah attractive to the user, social media user. Therefore, their cluster is bigger than the Prabowo. And the next one, it's on your right. I drew the data, I collected the data during Dirty Votes. Dirty Votes, it's a YouTube documentary. The documentary discuss how the president accused uh, tried to breach the election using government funding, using social support for the people. And the data shows that there is also polarization that reflects political affiliation with specific candidate and party. And the last data from social media, this is from TikTok. This is at the end of public campaign in Jakarta between Prabowo and Anies. You can see that both camps mobilizing support and try to shape public opinion both offline and online. So basically, this is aligned with the argument as self networks. Uh, it's in social media context. It's rarely. Three different supporters have conversation, cross-cutting information that is required for liberal democracy. Less likely people discuss on rational thinking. They use emotional attachment to discuss. It seems more divisive than before. And lastly, I drew the context in digital divides. Data from our Bureau Statistic, Indonesia Bureau Statistic, suggests in Indonesia there is only 18% household on personal computer and 86.5 of them connected to the internet. In general, only 66.5 of the population had internet access. This is a big problem where the latest information regarding politics, regarding campaign, it's available online. I know television it still play a big role in Indonesia. However, the condition of traditional media like television and newspaper, it seems like they are partisan to one of the candidate. The role of opinion leader also huge in Indonesia because those who couldn't access the internet or information from the internet, they relied on traditional media and opinion leader. So therefore, this creates Indonesian at the time during the election. It depends on opinion leader and traditional media that are partisan. So this create a big issue in Indonesia. Uh, Moreover, social media algorithm often, it's individualized and customized, and it seems to satisfy the need of the user. So they only get information related to their browsing or their searching behavior. And this is intensifying the spread of populist narrative during the election. So what I can take from the data and from the discussion. So those three candidates, it's fearing the loss of votes. Therefore, they use populist narrative because they know this is the best way to gain or to mobilize supports and to get the votes during the election. So they're fearing the loss. And the second one is social media itself already create a filter bubble, echo chamber, whatever you call it. It seems like they cluster together. Uh, this is, this assumption, this data, it's along with the network itself. So we have a big issue, especially in the middle class. The assumption in democracy is if you have a big middle class, the middle class will think rationally. But in Indonesia, the middle class, it's somehow they are abstain during the election or they support one of the candidates because they support the populist candidates. And this is big issue in the long term because this is a threat to Indonesian democracy. It could lead to the selection leader based on a national approach, and based on the literature, we know that the President Jokowi, it seems like uh, soft authoritarian in Indonesia. Let's the Indonesia using less democratic principles. This is the big issue. The 2024 presidential election in Indonesia exposed the intricate relationship, the complex relationship between populism, digital platform, and political engagement. And this is some recommendation. The connection between digital divide, network self, and populism. It's a challenge for democratic countries like Indonesia. It seems new media it's failed to deliver its promise as deliberative political means. It seems social media and the internet reinforce polarization and populism. So how we untangle this situation? The problem. One of way it's promoting digital inclusion, digital literacy. I don't know how to create rational voters, but it's hard because social media is so powerful. Digital media it seems like the first destination for information, political information. Therefore, I believe more research in regards to digital media, populism, and rational voters is required for the future. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Whisnu. That's brilliant, nice and clear, and nice slides. Thank you. We'll come back to you with some questions because there's lots of enticing details there on similarities and differences between the three candidates. Our second paper is Kuskridho Ambardi from Gadjah Mada University in Yogyakarta. And you are there, ready to go. Excellent, wonderful. And your paper is up, fantastic. So the paper title, of course, is Populism on Display, Understanding the Role of Social Assistance Programs in the 2024 Indonesian presidential election. So this is, in other words, social assistance programs are a legitimate part of a modern society, and it's good to have them, but the argument was made that they were used to buy votes, basically to influence people. A common issue in democracy. So really good to see this unpacked.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Barton, the chair, for giving us an opportunity for presenting our research paper. But let me begin by introducing our team. We are a team of 4 researchers, actually, but today the team will be represented by myself and my colleague, Ragil. In the beginning, when we started our work, our research in this issue on populism, we actually have known that there are a lot of papers that discuss Indonesian populism, and various aspects have been explored. So our initial challenge was to find a gap among the available literature, because if somebody else has already discussed at length, and then we simply repeated what has been discussed, and then there is no contribution from us. But when we sift through the literature, we found a less explored line of research that focuses on the practices of discourse, of bansos, or social assistance during the presidential elections. Of course, the context is recent, and then we can at that time we thought that maybe we can try to contribute something new based on what was going on during the presidential election. And bansos, of course, as we already know, that this is one of the core tenets of populism, of Indonesian populism, that every candidate in Indonesian elections touts the issue of bansos. And then, of course, some of the candidates tries to take position during the campaign of presidential elections, either challenge or writing the issue of bansos or social assistance. I hope that all of you are familiar with bansos term, because I will use this term all the way to the end of this presentation. Why we focus on the issue of bansos? Because there was a unique situation actually that surrounded the bansos policy during the elections. Why it is unique? Because it was a government policy, and then of course the incumbent, if the incumbent participated in the president election, they will use this bansos policy for trying to reap political support from the voters, of course. But there was no incumbent because Jokowi, as you all know, that Jokowi was ineligible to become a candidate. But there is quote unquote, there was quote unquote a semi-incumbent, which was represented by Prabowo, an accomplice of Jokowi, and he also took Gibran Raka Buming Raka as his vice president, and Gibran, of course, was the Jokowi's son. And then, to a degree, Prabowo was seen domestically as the incumbent at that time. Of course, bansos would become a policy that can be used by Prabowo to advance to build political support and to get block voting from voters, of course. And then the situation was also unique at that time because the president Jokowi initially gave his endorsement to the third candidate, which was Ganjar Pranowo and Mahfud MD. But then in September 25th, when the KPU, after the KPU officially announced the candidates for presidential elections, and then Jokowi changed his position from giving endorsement to Ganjar Pranowo, and then he changed position and gave his endorsement to Prabowo and Gibran Raka Buming Raka. That's of course give us like an idea, and then how the discourse of populism changed at that time, because previously Ganjar eagerly supported all of government policies when Jokowi gave his endorsement to Ganjar, but when it changed when the president or Jokowi changed position of giving endorsement to another pair of presidential candidates, and then Ganjar Pranowo had also changed his position. Previously, he totally supported all government policies, but then Ganjar Pranowo had become critical toward the government policies, including bansos. And then with that background, we assume that exploring and investigating bansos discourse may promise a deeper understanding on the nature of Indonesian populism. At the same time, we also think that, how do we see how populism played in the electoral politics. So in mapping the discourse of populism, we try to group the group literature on Indonesian populism into three. The first one, there are those literature, for example, written by Fethi Hadis, that connects the social divisions and political oppositions with the content of populism. That's one group of literature. And then the second one, those who discuss the connection between populism and digital media. And then there is another group of literature that also emphasize particular aspect of the populism. That is how candidates activate block voting by specifying or by emphasizing the issue of bansos for electoral gains. So if we try to simplify our conceptual framework for our research to map the bansos discourse during the presidential elections, you can see the visual presentation of our framework. To describe or to map the populism discourse, we try to use all those three groups of literature by looking at the content of the style of discourse, by looking at whether particular candidates connect the issue of bansos with particular groups, social groups within the society. So on the left, there's social and political cleavages, whether it shapes the rhetoric of or the discourse of populism. And then the second group of literature also give us an idea how to map the discourse by looking at the process of activation, political activation. That means how all those candidates use the rhetoric of bansos to activate particular groups within the society. And then the third group of the literature also guide our research to see how the social media shape the discourse of bansos in Indonesia. This slide shows us the more or less the operationalization of how we map our discourse, how we map our the discourse of bansos. So we try to find in the discourse whether particular candidates have a positive or negative attitude toward the policy of bansos. And then we try also to find the different targets developed or targeted by each pair of presidential candidates. For example, Anies, we know that Anies, starting from when he was the governor of Jakarta, tried to woo Islamic voters. So maybe that exclusion and inclusion of bansos color the framework or color the discourse developed by different candidates. And then we also try to find in the discourse whether the nature of social media also shapes the discourse of populism in Indonesia. For example, whether the elite or the candidates is more quote unquote civilized than the public when they are trying to criticize or support any positions on bansos. And then with this framework, we try to collect data, and then the data and our findings will be presented by Ragil. Okay, go ahead, Ragil.
Thank you, Mas Dodi. Okay, thank you, Mas Dodi, and hello, everyone. I will continue the presentation. As Mas Dodi said, we have collected the data. We use this Apple-Fi, a cloud-based web scraping tool that collects the data spanning from September the 5th up to 1st April. and we focus on Instagram posts, including the hashtag keywords, comment and post on the Instagram post that use keywords such as Bansos, Pemilu 2024, Jokowi, Anies, Ganjar, Prabowo, of course, and all the related issue. From that September the 5th up to April the 1st, we collected from 2000 up to 4000 data set, but we focus on this 1968 Instagram post, and we categorize it, and we try to discuss it in 3 groups using frameworks that Mas Dodi has said earlier, discussing the idea and also the discourse between the semi-incumbent and the opponent, the degree of exclusion and inclusion, the use of class-based and identity-based sentiment in representing, in displaying the pansos. Just quick note that this is a glimpse of our findings. This is the preliminary findings. We still taking it. We still try to explore the narratives behind our data, and we keep searching and also keep scribing the data because interestingly, the data reached at its peak after the elections, as shown in these graphs. I'm sorry, maybe it's too small, but as you can see, from September up to April, the increasing trend started from January, that people started to talk about pansos, especially during the hearing with the Supreme Court. It keeps going up, the discussion about pansos on social media. As Mas Dodi said, interestingly, there is no exact incumbent, but we have the semi-incumbent. So that's why we want to add that word, the relation between bansos and petahana or incumbent. But it's not that significant, actually, the data says, because if you can see in the graphs, a lot of people interestingly discuss bansos in relation to suku and agama, in relation to identity, not even class. Yes, of course, a lot of people comments the word significance is quite high, around 1,500 mentions, posts, and also hashtag talking about bansos in relation to class, but it's higher, the discussion on identity compared to class. It's not even close. If we talk about the discussion about bansos and petahana, it's very small. But it doesn't mean that the incumbent doesn't play a role in the framing, in displaying bansos. I will say it later. But it is the general narratives that the discussion on bansos in relation to Pemilu 2024 is that it's increasing starting from January and reached its peak in April. And we talk about bansos. We still use the word civil acceptance because we still want to dig it, and we try to understand the emotion, the simplicity. These findings, I think, resonate what Simon has said earlier, the simplicity of the program, that people are happy about bansos. And if you run for president's election, you cannot really take a position as anti-bansos. That's why Anies take position as anti the politicization of bansos, anti-politicization of social assistance, because people are happy with bansos. But interestingly, the second narrative is anger, because I will say it later, but during the word count hashtag that we try to find, Anies Baswedan really in the first position that people mention this name, when they talk about Anies, and also the Anies teams also quite significantly spread the idea of bansos as something that we should take aside of, because it's the incumbent, it's using tax money and all those narratives. But the general idea that people really happy about it. This is the effective and emotional analysis of our content that people happy. So back to our question, the role of bansos. It tries to create acceptance, and Prabowo and Gibran really did it well, because from based on our data, people are happy about bansos. The third group of our analysis is after we discuss the general narratives, we try to look at the civil acceptance to check on the populist strategy, whether it works or not. Apparently it works. Now we want to discuss the frame surrounded around bansos. And we found that identity, class, and national sentiments apparently seems to have been dominating the idea of bansos in Instagram posts specifically. As you can see in that box display, Anies Baswedan's #1 mentioned username or person in the discussion of bansos, followed by Prabowo. But Ganjar is nowhere close to Prabowo or other account related to Ganjar. For example, Arsyad Rashid, the head of tim pemenangan pemilu of Ganjar Pranowo, and it's not even close to, for example, Caimin now or the hashtag Jokowi. And this is quite strange, because if we took the general narrative, the discussion about Petahana is not that big. But if we try to narrow it down to the username, then people talk a lot about Bansos in relation to Prabowo, Jokowi, and Gibran Rakabuming Raka. Interestingly, Mahfud MJ got more mention than Ganjar Pranowo. And these is things that we want to dig deeper, and that's why we said earlier, this is just preliminary findings. We haven't really checked on every detail of the data. But this is a glimpse of it, and we can give us a clue where to go deeper into. And that's the most mentioned username. But the word count hashtag we find quite interesting as well. That if we look at bansos, it's not a miskin or a class-based sentiment that the most mentioned hashtag accompanying bansos. It's Islam, it's agama, it's Allah. So maybe in our public discussion, it's already there, and it's true that Anies has shifted his position from the quite right Islamist group to more inclusive. But the narratives of Islam, agama, and Allah still dominating the theme of the discussion in bansos. And from this data, we reflect that Anies Baswedan is quite clear to his position. Prabowo, well, it's part of the semi-incumbent. But the interesting thing is that Ganjar Pranowo seems to have been struggling in positioning himself into this discourse of bansos. But then again, we found quite interesting thing that we cannot really confirm it now, but it's a glimpse of it, that when we try to search the data, the user try to search the data based on user, we try to search Ganjar Pranowo, it's just Ganjar Pranowo account and the related account, for example, Arsyad Rashid and all those name in the groups. But when we search Prabowo, a lot of account we found outside of the account that we know, and we still want to understand this, and we still keep convince ourselves that this is the data. So because we are not confident yet with that specific data, so we decide not to share here in the presentation, but maybe in the full paper that we will explore more some of the questions, some of the data. So Bansos as relevant, the role of Bansos is the significant narrative for them to position themselves in the campaign. And it's true, Baswedan's transition towards more inclusive narratives. Prabowo take the nationalist sentiments with the words Indonesia, Bantuan, and also some of them, some of the account that related to Prabowo use also class-based sentiments such as miskin. But Pranowo and Mahfud's stance are a bit vague, and there's an ambiguity in that position. And because it's still preliminary findings and we want to explore more, there's some further exploration that we want to do. First, we want to, from the September to April 2024, we want to fight based on some important momentum. And that specific momentum is when Gibran Raka Buming Raka was declared by the Koalisi Indonesia Maju that he is on their side. And also we want to looking into the politicization of Bansos, the process of exclusion. We just presented the class-based sentiment, the identity-based sentiment, but we want to really understand how does it work based on the cleavage activation that's rooted in the socioeconomic histories. Also, we want to understand the changing network weighted by the electoral context with its politicization issue, the degree of exclusion and inclusion, also the different mode of expression between the candidates, the elite, and also the difference between the mass, the public. I think that's all we have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Mr. Barton.
Thank you very much. It's a really interesting paper. I'm tempted to ask questions now, but we'll leave the questions later on. It's interesting that in popular discourse, there was a stream that thought that Bansos was a very important factor, but you've shown very clearly that it wasn't as decisive as we sometimes imagine. We'll come back to that in a minute. Our next paper is with Hestutomo, Restu, Kuncoro, and Atin Prabandari. Are you guys ready to... Your paper's loaded? Yep, it's coming up. It's brilliant. Great presentations, by the way, with nice slides. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. There's some fancy graphics font work here. This is nice.
Yeah. Can I start now?
Yes, please. So it's Hestutomo is Tom, right? Is that we'll go with Tom?
Yes. Yeah.
That makes it easy for us. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Thank you for Mr. Barton. So I would like to start by introducing myself and my team. So my name is Hestutomo Kuncoro, but you can just call me Tom. Everyone does. I'm here along with my former professor and mentor, Ms. Atin Prabandari, and we started as a two-team researchers, but then somewhere along the point of doing our research, we thought we need the help of someone from the lower age bracket. So we include one of my research assistants as one of the researchers as well, because we're dealing with something that both of us are not quite familiar with. So our research focusing on a concept that is relatively new in electoral studies, not just in Indonesia, but also in globally as well. And that is the concept of what I would call for this particular purpose as satellite campaigning. This is the term used by I think the leading experts on this issue is someone from University of Sheffield called Professor Thomas, and I think she's a leading expert on this, and she used these terms. Although other terms has been used, so for example, there are terms used. There are terms citizen-initiated campaigning, Also, there are terms called unofficial campaign, civil campaign, and all of that. However, the concept behind the term is quite similar along all of those terms. That is, this is campaigning activities conducted not by official party officers, not by official members of the campaigning team from candidates, but by what I would call a regular citizens. Now, it doesn't have to be that these are organically campaign or that appear organically. Someone, I just want to make content about my favorite candidate today. Although that's also includes in the concept. We also include those who also probably have some connections behind the scenes with the candidates or the parties, but whatever the links are, they are not still. I would also include that as satellite campaigner. So what this phenomenon tells us is that first, there is a transition from centralized to dispersed activism. And this is very much related to the rise of social media as a communication platform, because let's say 10, 15 years ago, if you want to create a content that can reach as many audiences as possible, then you would need like a lot of production value. You would need a lot of equipment, because you can only do those either to radio or to television. However, now with the emergence of social media, theoretically, everyone can do that from the comfort of your own living room. You can make a content, it can go viral. It's not unusual for a relatively unknown influencer to have like 10,000 to 100,000 followers in the social media, which is unprecedented in terms of the numbers of people that can view your contents at one time. So this technology creates this new phenomenon, and we believe that this is an interesting concept to look at, simply because first, the phenomenon is getting stronger, especially in the last elections. We see this phenomenon in the 2019 election in Indonesia, but phenomenon is actually a lot more salient in the latest elections, not just in Indonesia, but this phenomenon was also very much pivotal, if I may say so, in the Philippines elections that helps Bongbong Marcos become the new president of the Philippines. So this is a very interesting concept, and it's a lot to explore, and we would like to start that to explore this campaign. And why this is interesting in regards to populism, because these are not official campaigners. They are not officially connected to the parties, nor the candidates. They have the freedom, they have the liberty to make contents that may not actually be largely in line with the rules, with the regulations, with the internal rules within the parties, with the internal rules within the candidates. So basically, they have these liberties. They can make content that's a bit more controversial. They can use languages that will not normally be used by actual political candidates. And I think that creates a very fertile in which populism can theoretically be thriving. So, and we would like to, for this particular purpose, we define populism. Of course, I don't think we need to define it in this forum, but however, for the purpose of making our life easier during the data collections, we identify populist posts by this criteria. So first, if there is any content that suggests division between the people and the elite, of course, that will automatically be collected as a populist data. The use of simple and emotional language as well. Also, emphasis on the people's sovereignty, criticizing, like democratic process or whatever it is that not reflecting the people's will is also part of that. I think one of the very famous example of this we discussed in this forum, that is the decisions by the Constitutional Court in Indonesia to let Gibran run as a vice president. Also, identifying enemies or threats to the people. Also, it's very much related to the people versus elite dichotomy. So that was also good in the populism terms. Also, criticism of mainstream media, if they are regarded as as being written by certain political candidates, that would also be included. our analysis, and also if any focus on national identity, basically trying to separate us with them is also included in the populism. So we devised this simply to help us to differentiate the contents in social media, which are basically has populism in it, and which actually do not have populism in it. So we use this criteria. And so we would like to connect whatever it is that we find in social media with the literatures. And based on the literatures, of course, when we look at the literatures that talk about satellite campaigning, there are only a handful, like literally a handful. I could find about 7 or 8 that specifically talk about satellite campaigning, which is mixed splicing on one hand. So it's larger and explored area, which allow us to contribute, but also as a literature study, that's not enough. So we try to widen the spectrum of our literature search, and we try to connect social media in general with populism, because most of satellite campaigning, if not all of satellite campaigning, are conducted through social media. Only a very, very small fractions of it are actually done like on the road, like physically, a very, very small fraction, but most are done on social media. So I think it's fair if we use connection between social media and populism as the resources to which we try to base our analysis of the data. So first, social media, of course, they can serve as a communication platform, because first they have direct access. Those satellite campaigners, especially, they need to have direct access to their audience, because most of them do not have the production values of actual political parties nor actual media companies. So social media provide them with the direct access with very, very small groups. Also amplification, you can see that platforms can amplify populist message, either, I would say, quantitatively and qualitatively. Quantitatively in the sense that in addition to making actual content, they can also propagate content that already exists by clicking share, for example, or by making reaction videos, which is very popular nowadays. So they can also amplify these populist contents, which and those with emotionally charged content are usually more likely to go viral compared to those with a very, 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 very platonic, very, very flat sense of emotions in there. And also community mobilization. Not exactly sure how far this goes in the 2024 elections, but literature says that one of the things that makes social media very important in electoral campaigning is that sometimes can be used to mobilize communities. And I think it's more fruitful to talk about online communities rather than actual communities. We're talking about social media, because again, you can make communities on social media with a fraction of the cost that would cost you if you make the communities physically, like you will meet regularly on a cafe shop, for example. But on social media, you can do that every day. You can make content every day. You can talk to each other using the platform. That's the first ways in which social media has been used as a tool for populism. And the second way is that they can shape populist attitude, which is, I think, natural progressions to after communication, and then they can then shape the people's attitudes. I think this is also very much true to what have been discussed previously by Dr. Whisnu. He talks about echo chambers. Very popular content can then be amplified in a close interactions between social media users, and the algorithm in social media would likely to provide them with similar content. So if you are, for example, if you don't like a certain candidate, a certain person candidate, and you look at contents that criticize those candidates, then the social media are programmed to provide you with more contents that criticize the same candidate. So what it will do is would create polarizations, yes, but it also amplify the polarization that already exists. So it doesn't only create bigger schisms between the polars, but also entrench each of the polar even more compared to previous. And that's part of the challenge of social media, because social media are not designed to be democratic. They are designed to provide as much profit as possible for the company, and one of the ways in which they can provide some profits is by providing content that you want. Of course, everyone wants to see contents that that serve their own bias, and I think that's also one of the challenges in social media. And the last is that it becomes, of course, a challenge to democracy because simply what we said of the post-truth politics is, this is a term that was popular during the time of Trump's campaign, in which they are trying to provide an anti-narrative to the mainstream media by saying things like post-truth and basically social media has the ability to do that because they can provide the platform through which a certain person can access a lot of audience. In some cases, some key opinion leaders, for example, can actually have bigger reach, bigger network compared to an established media on the social media. So let me clarify. A lot of big media companies, they have their own social media. But in my previous research, we found that in certain cases, in a lot of cases actually, these accounts made by established media do not actually have the same reach, the same amount of interaction compared to accounts run by individuals. So this democratizing in one way, instrumentally is democratizing the information network, but also at the same time, it can become a challenge because then there is no gatekeeping in social media. Any kind of content can go viral. Any ridiculous content can go viral on social media, and that's become a challenge for a healthy democratic discourse. But I don't think, of course, that censoring is solution to that, but we have to acknowledge that the challenge that the social media poses, especially when it comes to populism and populist contents in social media. So what we do is we try to collect, we collected data from 3 different platforms, X, Facebook, and TikTok. I have been working with data from Twitter, now called X, and Facebook before, and but however, we believe that TikTok presence as a social media cannot be ignored anymore. I think I don't actually have TikTok. I don't actually use TikTok, but it's used a lot. Most of my students have TikTok accounts. They even make their own content. So I think we need to include that in our data collections. And looking at the previous presentations, I'm also tempted to actually include Instagram in that, which I didn't have any experience working with, but looking at the data from the first presentation, it was very interesting. So if time allows us, then probably we'll do that later for the final draft. But but we choose these 3 platforms first simply because they have the ability to be democratic space, if I would say so. This is the term used by Jennifer Foster in his book, saying how Facebook and Twitter can actually become a democratic space because they not only do they allow people to spread informations, but they allow some levels of interactions which you would not normally find in everyday situations. So, like for example, in a traditional campaign, candidate can say something to the people, like in a field with a lot of people attending. Whatever it is that they say, the people are just going to listen. They cannot respond, they cannot interact, they cannot engage. But in a social media setting, they can do that. And Gadjah, for example, actually decided to have a live session using social media in which he responded directly to what the fans and the haters have to say who are attending the session. So I think that's what we need to do is we need to treat this social media platform as a democratic space and see it as some kind of the modern public spheres that you would normally find, based on Habermas say, you would normally find public spheres in coffee shop, in places in which people can meet and talk. But now people can meet and talk every day on social media. So I think we need to also treat social media as some kind of modern public spheres in that regard. So, but before I move on to the findings of our data, I would like to provide a disclaimer that this is a very preliminary findings, and we have not been able to finish our analysis on X and Facebook. It used to be very easy to collect data and analyze data from Twitter, but then a certain billionaire came and bought it, and now it becomes a lot more hassling and a lot more expensive. But we'll get around that for the final draft. And also we have different approach in analyzing the data from Twitter and Facebook compared to the data from TikTok. So for Twitter and Facebook, for example, most of the contents are text. We have established ways to analyze text. We can use text mining methods. We can use some kind of topic modeling things. So basically, it's unsupervised machine learning model in which you ask computers to look at the data and then to provide some kind of grouping based on what being proved, which is a very, very established ways of analyzing contents based on text. On TikTok, however, most of the contents are not text-based or even picture-based. Most of the contents that we collected is video-based. And so the methods in which we use to analyze data from X and Facebook cannot be directly used to collect data from TikTok simply because they are not text, they are videos. So what we decided to do is we try to collect data in the same way, try to emulate as close as possible the experience of someone on a typical scrolling session. So there is an API for TikTok. We can collect data from TikTok using API, but we decided not to do that because we want to emulate the experience. So what we asked, what we did was we asked our data collectors to start with a very popular keyword on TikTok, do that, search it, see contents that may or may not be populist based on the criteria that I have explained earlier, and then just follow the algorithm to look at the next contents. So we want to emulate, the typical scrolling sessions for someone. You come after work, you sit down, you drink your tea, you open TikTok, and then that's the kind of experience that we try to emulate in our data collection for TikTok. And this is what we find. So first, of course, we see a lot of narrative of divisions. So a lot of contents highlighting the divide between the people and the elite. For example, there are a lot of satellite campaigner who criticize Ganjar Pranowo for his defensive stance on foreign workers. There are a lot of people saying Ganjar is basically what they try to say is that Ganjar is detached from the people because he doesn't really know what's actually happening in the field. A lot of foreign workers that work in Indonesia, they are not actually experts. They are manual laborers and so on and so on. So there is that narrative of divisions, especially in the case of Ganjar. So there are also narrative of divisions. However, in other aspects of the campaign as well. So the second part, for example, there is a defense of populist program. So one of the things that was very popular during the campaign was the free lunch programs from Prabowo and Gibran. And there are a lot of contents on TikTok who says that basically the programs are not feasible. The program's not going to be started in another 4 years. Program is going to be very, very wasteful on the resources. And there are those who defend. And in both camps, they are actually using populist contents. Those who say that the programs are not going to work, claiming that Prabowo and Gibran are detached from the people. They don't really know how to do this because they're elitists. They don't really know how to manage this. They only have these promises, but they don't really know how to go through to it. And those who actually defend Prabowo and Gibran actually, and this is very interesting because it's a populism on a multiple level. Those who defend Gibran and Prabowo, they actually try to portray the satellite campaigners who defend Prabowo and Gibran by portraying them as elitists. Those who try to defend Prabowo and Gibran try to portray the satellite campaigners who criticizing Prabowo and Gibran by portraying them as elitists. So in one of the content, for example, there are someone who criticizes Prabowo and Gibran based on a headline of an article, and the defender of Prabowo and Gibran says that, so this influencer doesn't really know what he's talking about because he doesn't really read news, he doesn't really know what's going on. And I think that's very interesting. So not only do you try to make the candidates detached from the people, you also try to make satellite campaigners who defend these candidates as detached from the people, which is, I think, is a very interesting finding, which I did not expect to find. And also, another thing that we find quite a lot is the critics of the political dynasty. This is the one that have been discussed repeatedly in these forums. Gibran being the eldest son of the current president and being the vice president candidate illegally. Some people may say that because the decisions of the Constitutional Court was unconstitutional, ironically. And a lot of these contents basically try to portray these dynasties as, this is a dynasty, they are elitists. We cannot associate ourselves with them. In some of the contents, they even talk about the current, the grandson of the president saying that in 2030, how can the younger generations be involved in politics if we know that in 20 or 30 years it's going to be Jan Etes, the grandson of the current president, is going to be the next big candidate. So, yeah, there are a lot of talk about that, trying to portray the Jokowi dynasty as elitist and disassociate. We need to disassociate ourselves from it. The fourth findings that we found from TikTok is that there is the use of emotional language, the use of simple emotional language to engage viewers. So this is what I talked about in the very beginning of the presentations. When we're talking about satellite campaigners,
Tom, sorry to interrupt, but can we wrap here and then come back to these things in the question time?
Oh, yes,
there's a lot. I think there's a lot of interesting material here for the Q&A, but probably we better leave it for the Q&A. But just generally this focus on satellite campaigns is fascinating, and it's clear that populist language cuts both ways, that it's not the sole preserve of any one team. But let's unpack that in the Q&A. Really nice presentation. We're just sort of, our time's slipping, so I don't want to let others miss out because we've squeezed the time out. Thanks, Tom. Our last panel is with Professor Ihsan Yilmaz, Chloe Smith, Hassan Bakhtiar, and Kainat Shakil. And their title, I'll give you two titles. First, the official title is A Comparative Longitudinal Discourse Analysis of Prabowo Subianto's Political Identity and Populist Strategies Across the Indonesian Presidential Campaigns 2009 to 2024. And my short title is Who the Hell is Prabowo Subianto? Because he's changed over the years. I remember the man on horseback riding a chestnut stallion at the National Stadium in 2014, and now he's Gamoy. Anyway, we'll come to that. Please take it away. Who leads off? Thanks. Yeah.
The title's been said.
Next one? Yep. Sorry. Yeah.
Over the 4 election campaigns that Prabowo has been in, we've seen significant and transformations in his rhetoric, messaging, and political performances. Prior to this election, he was known for being more nationalist, strongly chauvinist, Islamist populist characteristics, and seems to be antagonistic.
It is politics. Recently, we've seen a significant change with a TikTok dancing, cat petting, softer grandfatherly image. So we set out to analyse these changes. Using the conceptual framework of fluctuating populism, which Professor Ihsan and the authors had introduced earlier in a different paper, and it refers to the strategic adjustments made by populist leaders to their rhetoric and ideological messaging across different election cycles in pursuit of electoral victory. This sort of highlights how populism can be a dynamic and flexible phenomenon in some cases. So the methodology, it was a qualitative, thematic, you're fine, analysis. And we used the literature review and the conceptual framework to search for underlying messages, narratives, and rhetorical strategies. So speeches of 4 election cycles were analysed, 2009 to 2024. There were 33 in total. So here, this is just also an initial analysis. We're going to be looking more in depth and finding more patterns in the data, but from the speeches that we've analysed, the 33, this is what we have identified. In his main political ideas from 2009 to 2024, in 2009, he was talking about overhauling the current system and changing the economy and the management of state development. 2014, he had a real focus on stopping the national economic bleeding out and regaining Indonesia's strength and prosperity. 2019 was building a sovereign and strong country, self-sufficient in energy, food, and water. He also had a big focus on creating jobs for Indonesians, strong economy, and internal manufacturing. Then 2024, there was a significant shift, and he presented a continuation campaign of Jokowi's development programs and Indonesia's prosperity. Still maintained a strong focus on eradicating poverty, especially for children. And here's just one of the quotes we took from the recent election. Jokowi's laid a strong foundation for all of us on all fronts, both in terms of economy, in terms of socio-culture, both in terms of economic, social security, and also health. And of course, we must continue this solid foundation continuously and continue to perfect it in the future. And then we've looked at who he cast as the people over the years. In 2009, it was the Indonesian people, poor and economically marginalised. That sort of carries through the years as well, as farmers, small traders, fishermen, breeders, workers. 2014, he sort of referred to the Indonesian people and those who share the values. The poor, especially rural workers, fishermen, small trades, teachers. He also made initial appeals to conservative Muslims or those who held or associated with Islamist views. And then that strengthened, obviously, in the following year, 2019, where he referred to people of the nation, people who were fed up, quite antagonistic sort of campaigning, teachers, the poor, younger generations, pious Muslims, the Ummah, and direct references to populist Islamist actors. And then in 2024, still referenced sovereign people, farmers, fishermen, the sons and daughters of Indonesia, and Muslims and followers of President Jokowi. This is another quote. This is from 2024 as well. Ladies and gentlemen, from the young age of 18, I've pledged that I'm ready to die for the nation and people of Indonesia. This means I have to fulfill my duty to the nation and the people of Indonesia. And at this moment, have risked my life for decades for the Republic. I'm not willing to see poor people in Indonesia. Who did he cast as the elite? In 2009, it was the corrupt neoliberal government. 2014, moralist but corrupt government who he accused was stealing the wealth of the people. 2019, it's about undemocratic elites, corrupt elites, started to get that evil elite, sort of a religious populism language in government. And then 2024, the elites were good. Ladies and gentlemen, Prabowo Gibran's team is a continuation of Jokowi's team. He also did blame the bad elites, his political oppositions, and those who continue to steal. Hey corruptors, hey thieves, be careful. 14th of February, the people of Indonesia will speak. The people of Indonesia will speak and will bring prosperity to all the people. Inshallah, inshallah. And then the bad elites as well were foreign powers who he still was accusing of being corruptors, stealing, foreign stooges. Prabowo Gibran is with the Indonesian people. And then the threatening others. From our initial data analysis and review, we found there's a bit of continuity here. You can see that there's foreign powers and country. There was a little bit of colonialism or colonialist powers throughout. In the first, he had a stronger focus on the World Bank and IMF. That sort of faded out a little bit, but yeah, out of all of them, this is sort of where we saw the most continuity. And this is his quote: "That's right, many countries are concerned. Many countries don't like it when we hydrate them. They want to take our goods, take our materials cheaply. Then our materials are processed in their factories, after which they sell their products at 10 times the value to us." So who is Prabowo signalling to? Organisations, movements, and communities for support. 2009, it was the Indonesian Farmers Association and Farmers Union, trade unions and labour unions in 2014. And then in 2019, he was directly signalling to Islamist groups and the movement that had come out following the 2017 National elections. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you GNPF, thank you 212, thank you FBI. So there he directly references them all, and he says they want to accuse you of being radical. I say you are not radical. Why do they want to pit Islam against nationalism? And in 2024, the leaders, he was signalling to the leaders of political parties and supporters of Jokowi's leadership. I respect, I obey, and I support. Mr. Jokowi, there are those who mock him, me too. Prabowo can only sell Mr. Jokowi. Well, I'm Jokowi's team. Why not? So, quite a change of tactic. And then... conclude, yeah, no problem. This we're going to be looking further into how he constructs and performs his political identity as well by analysing videos and social media. So just to finish up, I think what we've seen here is, yeah, a great example of fluctuating populism. He has changed his alliances, the people that he casts as bad and good, his policies around maybe what he thinks will be most powerful in each election. And
Thank you very much, Chloe. It's tempting with all these papers to spend more time diving deeper, and sorry to cut people off, but we'll take a quick tea break. Apologies, Tom and co online, but you can take a tea break too if you like, and come back in 10 minutes, 10 to 4.
And Q&A will be after.
Yeah, so we're doing
Q&A for this panel.
Which means that we're doing the Q&A in 10 minutes time. So for those online, we'll just take 10 minutes break, and in 10 minutes we'll start the Q&A time. So thank you.
Sorry, thank you. No, that's absolutely fine. It's been a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay. Oh, it's really fun.
Afternoon in the art gallery downstairs. Ambardi, he's actually, I've been looking him up, very famous Indonesian Australian artist. It's on in Geelong Art Gallery, 6:30, free drink and food. Now there's an incentive for anybody who and everybody would be very welcome. So I can send you it's tonight, Tuesday. I will. I'll send it out. Thank you.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Simon.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Chloe. See you tomorrow. Don't have to see you tomorrow.
Because it affects grading after investigation. If they have evidence they can make the case that they think it's fair, then they have across state and federal police agencies, they coordinate group they don't make that declaration, they don't have those resources. So it can't be a resourcing thing, it can't be a legal thing. Just because it starts as a counterterrorism investigation doesn't mean that the assailant ends up being charged on terrorism charges. But they sort of have to make a resourcing decision at the outset. That's a big thing. Secondly, I mean, fairly obvious point, but that's the top think about it. Butler Junction is tragic. Ran up to the she had no choice. Once he raised his weapon to shoot for his torso, he's almost certainly a fatal shot, 2 shots. Dies. Then you can't speak to them. So then you never speak to family, friends, nothing's done, nothing to do with fakes. Mental health is pretty clear. Whereas Monday night, they've got the 16-year-old. He's got some injuries, but otherwise he's able to speak. They can reach out to his family, they can look at his other social circle, they can look at his online footprints, look at what he's posted, and I think they saw a pretty compelling story very quickly. I think that this is exactly a single name is the most sorry, Northwestern Iran was probably. And of course, this video got to be public and transparent. Secretly, investigation that would be Rachel.
Yes, I know. And say, they say, okay, try 8 options. And you secure 3 false pictures. And still saying that this is my thing. And I write a paragraph or 2 pages on page to the poster. And that email asking message, email ask API for email, and also message to most of the this and so on. Thirdly, more specific. Otherwise, This is like 40,000 votes. Those who tablet a lot of money. Right? It should be a kind of it's half a day. Or message can provide something. Yeah.
They buy that.
This one already, right? Also,
Are we on?
Are we? Yes, please.
Okay, so I don't think we have any questions in the chat function, right?
No.
No. So we'll take 10 minutes now for discussion. Any questions from anyone or just comments? Briefly, please. I will start here in the room at Burwood if we don't have anyone. Okay, then please. You can see the screen, I can't. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Maria, you have your hand raised. Either that you accidentally hit the icon. Yeah, thanks.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, we can hear you clearly, thanks.
Okay, so I actually have 3 questions for each presenters.
Okay, can you make them sort of really brief, Maria, just so we get into it quickly? Yeah, thanks.
First for Whisnu. Whisnu, have you encountered any research on why, although our quality of democracy is declining, but the approval rate of Jokowi has been above 60%, even until the day of the elections?
Yeah.
And the second one to Pak Kuskridho about the bansos. You know that Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono was the first one who promoted the bansos, and many of the academicians also mentioned that kind of approach as a populist. I just want to know why in 2013 and 2014 he did not get as much as popularity as Jokowi in 2019 using the similar approach. And the last one for Kuncoro, you mentioned about satellite campaigns. Is it similar with the operation? I just know, is there any significant difference or and have you ever familiar with the term of operation? Thank you. That's for me.
Thanks, Maria. That's really great. Good questions. Before we answer Maria's questions, is there anyone else who has questions or comments? Yes, please go ahead. Yeah. Push the red button so that it comes off. Yeah.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Tom Kuncoro previously provided data comparing 2 periods of time, January and after the release of Dirty Vote documentary, and the data said that Gadjah and Anies outnumbered Prabowo on social media, but actually the fact that the Prabowo has won the election. So what actually contributed to the victory of Prabowo? And can you please provide us information about the role of buzzers or social media warrior in their strategy in their campaigns?
Yeah, great questions. Any other questions before we go to the panel for answer? Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You are right. Actually, the idea of bansos was initiated by SPY, by Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono during the second term of his presidency at that time. And then Yudhoyono was one of those politicians who read data. And he knew well at that time that bansos, or at that time was called BLT, bantuan langsung tunai or cash transfer, had an electoral effect. I guess since then, and then the politicians usually know the electoral effect of bansos, and then they use it extensively during campaign. So that's why the 3 pair of candidates during the presidential election of 2024, all of them address the issue. And then the challenger, let's say Anies Baswedan, did not oppose the idea of bansos, but they want to depoliticize of bansos. So by framing the argument or the discourse that it was financed by the government, and the government got the funds from taxes. So that's the maximum or the optimal way of Anies that can advance for his campaigning, because if he was again if he were against bansos, he would isolate a section, a large section of voters. The same thing happened to the third pair of candidates, Ganjar Pranowo and Mahfud. They just want to depoliticize. So all the three pair of candidates actually were well aware of the electoral effect of bansos. So that's why the range is not between against bansos or supporting bansos. Supporting bansos, but depoliticizing it. That's the way. That's the best way that can be the best position that could be taken by the other candidates. Of course, the second candidate, Prabowo and Gibran Rakabuming Raka, tried to claim that it was the government, and then they were the representation of government. They sided with the government because Prabowo, of course, has been the Minister of Defense, and then Gibran Rakabuming Raka was the son of Jokowi. So they capitalized that, and then even adding more policies like makan siang gratis. But at the same time, of course, we know that now after the election, and then the Minister of Finance, Sri Mulyani, said that we did not have the money for makan siang gratis or free meals for Indonesians. So basically, capitalizing the bansos issue for electoral gains for the second pair of candidates, Prabowo and Gibran, but at the same time they want to add more, but without considering how they finance their policies. So you are right, Maria, that it was not original idea of Jokowi, and it was not original idea of Prabowo, but they knew that bansos and other social policies can produce block voting during the elections. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really nice, concrete answer.
Maria?
Thank you, Kuskridho. That's a nice, concrete answer. I mean, sometimes we think something explains what happens with voting, and yet it's not as decisive as we think. And probably bansos wasn't as decisive as was thought, even though it was a point of much discussion. Okay, so Maria's other questions from the panel?
Okay, we can move on to the next panel. If